llamar a Diogo. Sí, porque esperamos.
Is your preference to have all of us have our cameras off while others are speaking? Or are we supposed to be kind of looking at the screen, engaged in the room? Giorno, do you have a preference? You're muted.
Well, if you are speaking, of course, your camera has to be on.
I just don't know what's in the room, so I was just thinking: should we have our camera on and be not get engaging, or should we have our cameras off?
We prefer to leave the camera on, so you are engaging the audience also.
Okay, thank you. I just don't know what's in the room, so I was just thinking: should we have our camera on and be not get engaging, or should we have our cameras off?
We prefer to leave the camera on, so you are engaging.
In that case, I noticed that I am an orange on fire person and not me, and my camera is on, so I don't know why.
I can see you, Roma.
Oh, interesting.
I can see both you and the on fire person.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just see myself as on fire, so good thing. Or stand-up comedy. Thanks, Linda.
Hello, dear friends.
Hello, how are you?
Good, greetings from Paris.
Hi. Hi, Jorge.
From Costa Rica.
Hi, Nicolas. Welcome. We are a few minutes away from starting. I can hear you well, and everything is set up.
Quick question, Silvana, how will we be passing our slides? Do we just say next slide, please, or do we have control, or how does that work?
Next. Avoid to say any other words so we don't lose time on that. Just, yeah, next should be good.
Okay, thank you.
Will it be closed captioned or no? There won't be subtitles.
Yeah, I can enable it.
I don't know. Just for non-speakers of English, sometimes it's helpful to have
Yeah, it's
Written.
I have translated captions.
Problem on the construction sector and the real estate sector. So, somebody will be interested in this comment today. We are just over there. So, came after the presentation and we can explain. So I can show you if you want. But we are just here. With the card on the table. Obrigada, tá?
So.
Test, test. Good afternoon, everyone. We're just having a few technical issues here, and we'll be aiming to get away under the next couple of minutes. Thank you for bearing with us. You're at the Buildings and Cooling Pavilion. Hello everyone, welcome to the Buildings and Cooling Pavilion. My name is Harry Mills and I'll be moderating this session here this afternoon. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we're meeting here in Belém, the Tupinamba and Pacajás people. This session is going to be focused on the most powerful levers we have for climate action in the built environment, sustainable and circular public procurement. I'd like to acknowledge the Global Alliance for Building and Construction, the UNEP and One Planet Network, and many other organizations that are shaping this. Public procurement shapes roughly 10 to 15% of global GDP. In construction, it sets the rules for the game and what it gets built, how fast, how slow, how quick, and with what environmental impact. if governments align procurement criteria with near zero emissions, circularity and resilience, we shift entire markets. It is one of the most immediate and scalable pathways to deliver on the building's breakthrough, the Charlotte Declaration and the Paris Agreement. Procurement sits at the intersection of climate, affordability, and resilience. Every public project is a chance to reduce a whole life carbon, support local innovation, and build economic value. What we're going to explore today here, we have got a great variety of speakers from all over the world. We're very privileged for that, and I'm excited to introduce them to you shortly, both in person and virtually. The event is designed to be action-oriented. We'll hear from leaders from Ghana, Finland, Costa Rica, Japan, across the order desk, RICS, ICC, Adaptio, and many others working at different points in the procurement, design, and implementation cycles. We're going to have a crack at using a Slido. If that doesn't work, I'll take some questions for you. And we're going to be closing by framing procurement as a systems tool to enable change. When it reflects whole life thinking and circularity, it brings coherence across ministers, agencies, and supply chains. It's my pleasure now to introduce Jorge Laguna Celes to set the scene with the global framework for action and its role in connecting procurement to the global climate communities.
Thank you very much. And it is really a pleasure to be virtually with all of you today. As you have already mentioned, and I want to thank our wonderful...
Thank you, Jorge. And Clement, I think we're good to go.
Can you hear me? Hello? Am I audible?
Please bear with us.
Hello? Am I audible?
Jorge, can I get you to try speaking now?
Yes. Thank you, Harry. I hope you can hear me now. I know online those connected can hear me, but maybe it's in the room that sound is not coming through.
Yeah, it's only in the room. On the stream, you are very clear.
Thank you. So let's give it a minute, and if not, maybe you can start with one of our wonderful speakers there that are already in the room. Hello? Can someone have a mic in the studio?
So,
hello?
Please continue with your presentations. Yeah.
Okay, are we audible now in the wonderful Buildings Pavilion?
You are in the stream.
In the stream.
In the pavilion, they are trying to solve it.
Okay, so let's give it a couple of minutes, and thank you so much for that update.
Yes, test sounds. Test sounds. Test sounds. Can you hear my voice in the room? Yes, I am testing now. Yes, I am talking for one moment. Can you hear me in the room? Yeah, I'm going to talk for a little bit. They're adjusting
I think in the room they're already talking, which is really good because that's what he wants. They're in the next speaker. We can see it here online. Let's see. Go ahead. Sorry.
The microphone is muted in the pavilion.
Excuse me?
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
So you can hear us?
We all know that it is important to have this sustainable procurement plans. And this would help the sustainability in the way. So what we believe in is that SPP we need some demand creation and signaling. So what we say is that public authorities account for the largest portion of GDPs, so gross domestic product expenditure. So when we are having this way, then there will be a need to leverage power to explicitly request for products with recycled way, and then content durability and repairability. Then they also have to signal the public sector, that a viable market is there, and therefore there's a need for them to be incentivized to enter into research and development so that we can enhance the business models. There is also the need for mandatory policies and regulations. So national and sub-nationals, there's a local government allowed to set policy framework, enacting legislations and mandatory minimum criteria for public tender. So you just don't go in and then we do it anyhow. But there should be some framework for public tender that will provide necessary cohesive pressure for organizations to adopt secular practices to gain legitimacy and avoid sanctions. The other thing that SPP would need, the SPP is that we need to have a whole life cycle costing, that by requiring procurers to consider the total cost from cradle to grave, the total cost of ownership, including operating, maintenance, and end-of-life costs, rather than just initial purchase price. The SPP makes it more durable and resource-efficient circular product financially attractive in the long run, if we consider the whole life cycle costing. Then the capacity building and knowledge sharing is also very important if we want the SPC to work. So training programs and expert support for procurement professionals and is crucial to ensuring that the knowledge and skills that are supposed to be designed to implement complex circular criteria. Knowledge sharing platforms among public entities help disseminate best practices and successful case studies or accelerating adoptions. So we need to have the capacity building for us to learn on best practices to assist in that. Then we also have data and accountability. If we want the SPP to work effectively, then there's the need for robust monitoring, reporting, and assessment systems that will help track the environmental impact and progress towards circularity targets. That is the percentage of recycled content, the waste reduction, and so on and so forth. The evidence base ensures accountability and helps refine strategies. Encouraging innovation. If we want the SPP to work, then we also need to encourage innovation. That the SPP policies can be designed to be developmental, creating demand for solutions that do not yet exist. We've already talked about R&D. So when they enter into it, then they would come out with the solutions that are not existing, rather than always adapting to what we already have. So not adaptive to current market offerings. This pushes suppliers to develop new and more products, services, and supply chain practices, fostering innovation and competition in the long term. So this is what we understand the SPP to be. My second assignment. The second one is, how has this been important in Ghana? How have we seen the importance in Ghana? And in Ghana, the SPP has helped us to achieve national and international goals. So through SPP, Ghana is able to achieve the SDG 12, which says responsible consumption and production. The SDG 11 talking about sustainable cities and communities. So Ghana aligns her procurement practices with sustainable international practices, which are undergirded by Ghana's endorsement of the framework of action. Environmental protection. In fact, SPP has also been very helpful for Ghana to protect its environment space by encouraging purchase of eco-friendly goods and services which significantly reduce environmental pollution and degradation. SPP has also helped to promote green technology. It has raised the use of environmentally friendly appliances and helps to eliminate technologies as essential purchase price is weighed against long-term benefits. It also helped to boost operational performance. For businesses in Ghana, adapting sustainable procurement practices has been shown to have a positive impact on operational performance. Then SPP has also helped to boost economic efficiency. Government expenditure in buildings has always been soaring, but with the adoption of the SPP, the government buildings considers environmental protection and social responsibilities. This improves economic efficiency by cutting down costs born from unsustainable interventions. So if you have a positive procurement, sustainable procurement plans, at least you are able to beat down costs, and then those unsustainable interventions are withdrawn from the system. Next. So this is how it has been. Now, in the case of Ghana, we have to plan to implement circular and sustainable procurement, public procurement in the built environment. So in the case of Ghana, we have, in the case of Ghana, SPP principles in the built environment has helped a lot and is being driven by the government commitments and international collaboration through a number of interventions. One of the interventions is the legislative reforms. So Ghana has currently amended its law, that is Public Procurement Act 2003, Act 663, and now to Act 2016, Act 914, with the aim of including sustainable procurement practices in all sectors, including building and construction industries. Ghana has also put up a sustainable procurement with policy. The Public Procurement Authority has developed the sustainable procurement policy, aligning it with national and international sustainable development goals. As I mentioned earlier, the SDGs, particularly the 12.7 on promoting sustainable procurement practices. There's also, Ghana has also moving into the Circular Economy Action Plan based on this SPP in collaboration with the Ministry of Environment, Science and Technology. In fact, previously it was Environment, Science, Technology and Innovation. But with the new government, we have taken out the innovation. I don't know where they put the innovation. So it's there. Then, together with European Union, Ghana has developed the National Circular Economy Action Plan. The construction sector is one of the 6 priority sectors identified in the comprehensive analysis with specific goals and actions outlined to advance circular economy within the country. Then we also have, Ghana has also gone into eco-labeling of refrigerators and air conditions, the RAC. So Ghana implementation of sustainable public procurement contributed to the Ghana's success story of eco-labeling of refrigerators and air conditions. The initiative has received massive promotion and adoption. So with all this is how Ghana is also working on the SPP in order to achieve whatever the cooling system that we want to have. With this, I want to say thank you.
Felix, that was amazing. Thank you very much. Big round of applause for Felix. Now, Felix, I'll come up and get that off you. We're just going to play a bit of... you can take a seat up here or down there, wherever you feel most comfortable, Felix. And Clement, we're going to stick with in-person. Apologies for those online. We are severe technical issues this afternoon. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome Emma Lapalainen up on the stage. I've worked with Emma now for 18 months, 2 years with the Materials Hub, the Global ABC, and a Fin Group advisor with the government on many different aspects, and she's here to talk about different aspects of circularity. So welcome, Emma. Round of applause for Emma. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm very happy to speak here today. My name is Emma Lapalainen. I am the CEO of Fin Group Consultants and represent the Ministry of the Environment of Finland here today. Next slide, please. Through the Circle Built Environment Working Group of the Global ABC. The Circle Built Environment Group, which I coordinate, is under the Materials Hub of the Global ABC. It's one of its 3 working groups, and it's led by Finland and co-led by RMIT University from Australia and Habitat for Humanity International. It's hosted by UNEP, and we have a really active action group working together, including World Business Council for Sustainable Development, World Green Building Council, UNOPS, UN Habitat, and University of Cape Town, and Energies 2050. And we continue the work of the Sustainable Buildings and Construction Program of the former Sustainable Buildings and Construction Program of the One Planet Network that operated from 2015 to 2022. It was the first global program, for example, that mapped the circularity indicators of the construction sector against the SDGs and highlighted the importance of the Global South for circularity in the built environment. And we at the Circle Built Environment Group of the Global ABC are continuing this work now since 2023. We work with policy development, capacity building, and market transformation related to circularity in the built environment. Next slide, please. So I will talk today about what is circularity in the built environment and how can it be implemented. So we are all buildings professionals here. We know that the building sector is terribly off track at the moment. We do have the solutions already. We know that, but we are not implementing them ambitiously enough yet. When it comes to the energy intensity of the building sector, we are about 11% above the required target at the moment. But what is not enough discussed yet is the circularity in the built environment. So global circularity in general is still in decline. There are many important reasons why we should be talking about circularity in the built environment. First of all, it could create a kind of systemic framework to accommodate the different climate actions in the built environment sector. But also we should be talking about it because we simply don't have the natural resources to build all the buildings that we need to be building in the coming years. And also thinking about the housing deficit, for example, in the Global South, we need to be talking about circularity in the built environment. At the moment, global raw materials consumption has increased 3 times over the past 50 years, and it's projected to double by 2060. These are huge numbers, and where we are at the moment is that the secondary materials consumed by the global economy is just dropping. So 21% drop over the course of the 5 years. So we are not going to the right direction at the moment. So what do we propose as a way forward with the Circular Built Environment Group is moving from a linear economic system to a circular economic system. So this means basically separating resource use and economic growth. It is possible. We propose to keep building materials in a closed loop economy, and by doing so we could decrease the global need for material extraction by even 1/3. So we are talking about very big numbers here, and at the same time we could create jobs and economic value throughout the entire value chain. So what is this circularity in the built environment? So many people combine or think about it as something to do with waste. Of course, it's that as well. Many people know that it's connected to reuse and recycling of building materials. This is a very important part of it. Reusing building parts, building materials, building products. Also using industrial byproducts, utilizing bio-based materials. This is part of circularity in the built environment, but it also means efficient use of existing buildings. So extending the operational life of buildings, for example, through changes of functions, avoiding new building when it's possible, and utilizing flexibly the vacant spaces in our already existing city structure. And it also means promoting the long service life in new construction. So thinking about material efficiency and life cycle approaches in new construction, designing in a way new buildings that we could enable disassembly, reusing and easy to recycle the buildings in the end of their lives. So next I will talk about two key results that the Circular Built Environment Group has had over the past couple of years. The first one is the National Circularity Assessment Framework, NCAF, which is first of its kind national level framework to provide governments with the system for assessing a baseline for circularity for the buildings and construction sector at the national level. So we want to do this because we would like to go further from the assessment to roadmaps and then implementation of the built environment sector and circularity in different countries. And this assessment framework was funded by the Finnish government and developed by UNOP and UNEP together and piloted by UN Habitat. And it was developed in close cooperation with the Global ABC and the One Planet Network and the Circular Built Environment Group. And it's a global tool. It can be used all over the world, and we engaged together with UNEP's 50 international advisors across the sectors in the development of this tool, and it was launched at the last COP. So the framework has so far been implemented in 2 countries, Senegal and Bangladesh. And how it works is that it has quantitative indicators, 23 quantitative indicators related to material flows, environmental and economic and social impacts. It also has a qualitative assessment questionnaire, including 7 enabling domains related to the enabling framework of the buildings and construction sector. So what would UNOPS and the Circular Built Environment Group of the Global ABC like to see as the next steps of this tool would be to expand it to new countries in the global south and global north alike, as well as to implement the actions that have come out of the assessments in these 2 countries that we have been implementing the framework so far, and going into the roadmap process, and then after that to implementation. And then also we would be very interested to start developing a circularity tracker that would be a global metrics to measure yearly circularity and benchmark it at national and regional level in different countries. So here you can find the QR code. It's on the Circular Built Environment website. You can find the guidance and tools and templates and a video as well. Next. And another key results that we have had during the past couple of years with the Circular Built Environment Group are the 10 whole life cycle recommendations for the Buildings Breakthrough. So you all probably know the Buildings Breakthrough. 29 countries have so far committed to its objectives. And we at the Materials Hub go the Whole Life Cycle Policy Coalition Group and the Circle Built Environment Group to develop these recommendations for the buildings breakthrough. We wanted to show how the whole life cycle approach and circularity approach are very important for the buildings breakthrough and the implementation of the buildings breakthrough key priority actions, as well as the Paris Agreement. And we wanted to give guidance to policymakers, especially, on how to implement the buildings breakthrough commitments nationally and locally by utilizing the whole life cycle approach and circularity in the built environment. And these recommendations were also developed through an extensive stakeholder engagement process, including over 100 academic, policy and industry professionals from over 40 countries. And they were launched last year in the Buildings and Climate Global Forum in Paris. So here you can see the headings of the recommendations. By scanning the QR code, you can see the whole text of the recommendations. But basically, the 7 first recommendations are related to the whole life cycle approach of the built environment sector, and the recommendations 8, 9, and 10 are related to circularity in the built environment, and they are very much interconnected. So here, more in detail, the circularity-related recommendations. 8, prioritize retrofitting, 9, material circularity, and 10, design for circularity. And finally, I'm very proud to launch here today the new Circle Built Environment website, as well as the Circularity and Whole Life Cycle case study platform, which we have developed together with UNEP. We collect good practices around the world to demonstrate the use of the 10 whole life cycle recommendations and the whole life cycle approach and the circularity, the built environment related case studies. And you're very welcome to submit your case study, and also you can find very inspiring case studies here in the platform. You can filter by recommendation, 10 whole life cycle recommendations, and geographical area, type of project, etc. So thank you very much from my side.
Thank you for that, Emma. Thank you for that, Emma.
Check.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Emma. That was fantastic. We're going to try and go for virtual once more. Yes, I'm aware these are out, not working. Thank you for being here and maintaining. Give us 1 minute. We'll try and get the Zoom back on.
Checking 1, 2. Yep. Can you hear us from Zoom?
Test, test, test.
All good from Zoom.
Yes or no?
So are the people in Belém can hear us?
Anil and Ryan, I might get you two up on stage now, and we might kick off the fireside chat just while we momentarily check if our colleague can join us online. And I'm going to get another microphone for you both. Bear with me. Thank you for those who've just joined us in person as well. You're at the Buildings and Cooling Pavilion. It's about sustainable and public procurement here this afternoon.
Hello. Let's do
Now
one
we've got
last
the second
try.
microphone. I'm going to hand that over to you, Ryan. And we've had no confirmation. So I'll get you, Ryan and Anil, just to give a brief introduction and background to yourselves, and we might kick off with the fireside chat.
No, absolutely. Ryan Kolker, Executive Director for Energy Resilience and Innovation at the International Code Council. ICC is probably best known for the development of model building codes and standards, and really the mechanisms that help support their effective implementation. So happy to be joined by Anil, so why don't you introduce yourself?
Thank you, Ryan. Thanks, Harry, for coordinating this and moderating this session. I'm really delighted to be here. Once again, my name is Anil Sahani. I'm the Global Head of Sustainability for the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors. RICS is a global professional body with 150,000 members. We are known for our standards, and one of the standards we'll be discussing today would be the whole life carbon assessment standard for the built environment. So Ryan and I, we prepared some slides, and we're going to keep it sort of more dialogue than presentation. So Ryan, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, so we've entered the standards portion of today's conversation, and really sort of recognizing, as we heard from Felix and others, really having the sort of requirements to be able to point to assure that we're getting the sustainability and other attributes that we're really desiring. And so particularly, picking up on the circularity discussion and the importance of a whole life cycle, a whole life carbon approach, to procurement, but also in the built environment at large. And so, we sort of tend to use this type of diagram to really understand the sort of impacts across the entire life cycle of a building. For a very long time, we've really only focused in sort of the very right side of that green box around sort of the operational. But as and you can go to the next slide. Sort of as the operational energy decreases, the impact of embodied energy and embodied greenhouse gas emissions becomes increasingly important. And so without really having a mechanism to understand across that entire sort of life cycle, we've left a lot of greenhouse gas emissions on the table. And so we really need mechanisms to be able to get to that holistic approach, and also, sort of assure that as we're sort of measuring and talking about this whole life carbon approach, that we're able to talk about it consistently. And so that's sort of where our work is today between ICC, RICS, and others that are working in this space.
Thanks, Ryan. So just picking up on that a little bit, if you take big picture, right now, globally, any building typology, 80% is operational emissions and about 20% embodied emissions, as Ryan mentioned. But we at RICS, ICC, and all other stakeholders promote whole life thinking, meaning we are not saying just measure embodied or just measured operational, measure whole life. And it's projected. There's a study in Australia that has projected that if business as usual, 2050, with the grid decarbonization and the broader economy decarbonizing, it's expected that the operational emissions will go down to about 20%. So it will reverse. Embodied emissions will account for about 80-85% of the whole life cycle emissions. Furthermore, as you all probably know, embodied emissions are locked in. You pour concrete, the embodied emission has been locked in. So that's why it's so crucial that we start thinking now. Many people think that embodied emissions relate to new construction. That is quite true, but it also, emissions exist even in our maintenance, replacement, repair, retrofit cycles. So we need to be mindful of that kind of embodied emissions also. The last point before we move forward, I want to make is, through our work, joint work with Judy, with ICC, with the Buildings Breakthrough B1 standards and certifications, the interim report that the World GBC released recently on the definitions, we are trying to show a clear connect between whole life carbon calculations and resilience. Because if you make buildings resilient, the need to repair, need to retrofit may decrease, and therefore you will have basically a lower embodied emissions also. So there is a direct interrelationship between those. I'll pass it back to Ryan because I think he can give the actual definition of what B1 has come up with.
Yeah, so as Anil mentioned, some of the priority actions around the sort of Buildings Breakthrough is to help support that consistency. And so priority action 1 is really about standards, certifications, really getting to sort of that common definition, common approach to sort of allow that comparability, within the broader building ecosystem. And I don't know that I need to read it, but it's there really recognizing, sort of the key aspects of low emission and resilient buildings. If you go to the next slide, the sort of second sort of collaborative piece is relative to the Buildings Breakthrough Priority Action Area 5 on capacity building and skills, which ICC is leading. And it's really about sort of identifying what are the tools that both personnel and institutions need to effectively implement the goal of near zero energy and resilient buildings. And so we'll actually be releasing a portal next week that starts to gather all of those necessary resources to move forward. I think the other piece I'd like to add to sort of what Anil mentioned relative to sort of that shift in moving from sort of more embodied emissions within the built environment. We've never really sort of had the conversation of how do we optimize across the entire life cycle of a building. So there may be products or materials that are maybe more carbon intensive in their actually manufacture, but in their sort of either long life or impact on energy use or other things may have a significantly better sort of emission profile in the operations. And we've never had sort of the mechanism to do that effectively. And so if you go back to two slides. One more. Great. So Anil, I don't know if you want to start with sort of the work that RICS has been doing.
Sure. So both our organizations provide a standard which is truly a methodology, a very comprehensive, consistent methodology for measuring, calculating, reporting emissions over the entire life cycle of both buildings and infrastructure assets, so both horizontal and vertical assets. Our standard, which is in its second edition, was released in September 2023. It has become effective July 1, 2024 for all our members globally. And this is not something new for RICS. Our first embodied carbon publication, which is now superseded, was in 2012. So we have been at this game for quite some time, and through our members' expertise have produced this. One thing that I'd like to point out before I pass it back to you, Ryan, is that our standard also connects to two other global freely available standards. One is called the International Cost Management Standard, or ICMS. The second is called the International Property Measurement Standard. Now, why is that important? The first one is important because in your assessments, you want to pursue an option which is cost effective. So we bring in connection to cost. I think our keynote speaker from Ghana talked about whole life cycle costing. So our standard allows you to cost options over a life cycle also. International Property Measurement Standard is a global agreed standard which has now become part of the EU Delegated Act on EPBD, which was under consultation last month, where all benchmarks, all carbon emissions will be, the denominator would be the GIA or GEA would be calculated using IPMS. Why is that important? Because we would need to measure the denominator also comprehensively. Apparently there's a 14% disparity between how we measure floor area. So changing the floor area when benchmarking is not good. So our standard, in addition to being open source, available freely on our website, also makes these two important connections. Over to you, Ryan.
Great, thanks, Anil. As I mentioned previously, ICC develops model building codes and standards. And so if we think about sort of the opportunity or the need to start to address that whole life cycle approach, we need a consistent way to measure that meshes with the codes and standards environment. And so ICC, working with ASHRAE, the American Society of Heating, Refrigerating, and Air Conditioning Engineers, is developing Standard 240 for the quantification of life cycle greenhouse gas emissions, really assuring that we have that common approach to making sure that what we are measuring, we're able to compare building to building. Governments can rely on that standard to be able to specify what level of requirements they're looking for, but also then feeding into insurance and finance sector as well, so they can sort of specify or really understand sort of what they're buying or they're investing in. And so I think the sort of important mechanism is sort of understanding the sort of slightly different roles that sort of ICC and RICS sort of play in this space. As Anil mentioned, RICS is certainly a sort of professional body of personnel and holds their members to very high standards. And so the RICS standard is very much focused on the role of the personnel and what do they actually need to be doing, whereas the ICC ASHRAE effort is really focused on sort of the technical and regulatory piece of how do you actually incorporate that into a regulatory framework. And so very much sort of complementary, throughout the entire process of developing Standard 240, we've looked to other standards to allow that, sort of uniformity and consistency and comparability. And so that's certainly an important aspect of that process. And so we expect Standard 240 to be available early next year. We may have a third public comment period actually coming up soon. So that may be sort of the last chance to provide input before the first release of the standard. But we are looking at going on continuous maintenance, so there will be sort of constant updates to the standard.
Ryan, I think you really made a very good point. Our standard, as I mentioned, is mandatory for our members globally. So if I'm a fellow of the RICS, if I do an assessment, I have to document that my assessment follows the standard. So individual members are sort of empowered to do this comprehensive approach, and I think through the 240p, you can have cities, jurisdictions, and the ecosystem of those players adopt the standard. So I think they work very well together. But as you know, both Ryan and I, we come from outside or inside of DC. When I arrived first, I was told that there is a World Series game happening. Turns out it was a game between Atlanta and Chicago. So when I reached and talked about international and global standards, I was pretty much shown the door. So standards are a pretty difficult business to get implemented and adopted globally because every region has their own context, their own construction practices. So the best we can do, and there's a meme on LinkedIn you can check out, bunch of surveyors got together and said there are 11 standards in the world, none of them work, so let's create the 12th standard. We don't want to do that. We want to align and map the standards together. So jointly between WBCSD, ICC, and RICS, with the help of GBDI, we are planning to launch a global coalition called CLEAR. It's the Coalition of Life Cycle Emissions Alignment and Reporting, in which we want to do exactly that. If there are differences between 240p, EN 15978, or some other regional measurement methodology, we want to publish an alignment framework so that all assessments can be benchmarked and compared. Earlier, during the Buildings Climate Global Forum in Paris, we released a document describing 6 or 7 dimensions of alignment between assessments that we can all follow to make assessments comparable. That's the intent between this coalition. We're really delighted that together ICC, WBCSD, and RICS with GBDI is inviting members to join CLEAR and work on this with us so that we can make these assessments all aligned and also reporting aligned at a global scale. Ryan, over to you.
You can go to the next slide. And so, certainly happy to be, participating in this effort. these are sort of the areas, and Neil mentioned that we'd be concentrating on as part of CLEAR. But again, I'd extend the invitation. If folks are interested in tackling this problem and really see the need, we'd welcome your engagement in that process. You can go one more slide.
Maybe I can.
Yeah.
So if we go back one, just very quickly, we're going to talk about aligning standards, aligning not only the assessment standards, but also any data standards. As we know, there is OpenEPD. There are various other globally available data standards also. I know Autodesk is working on a data standard. We want to look at all those, bring them, and make sure that they are aligned and talk to each other. We will then try and shift this transformation towards policy, working with the Whole Life Cycle Policy Coalition that Emma, you had mentioned, will try and connect to policy. And then obviously with B5, what Judy is leading on capacity building.
Thanks, Anil. And if you can go to the last slide. Unfortunately, one of the presentations that was going to be, sort of from folks online is really on the opportunity that offsite construction provides to address a lot of the challenges that we see in this space, and particularly the opportunities governments have to facilitate the expansion of offsite construction. And so that's certainly an area of priority within ICC, really recognizing both the sustainability needs, but often the challenges we see in society and as an industry, thinking about sort of workforce related issues, speed to market, and housing affordability. And so, just wanted to sort of add this piece here as we were talking about sort of opportunities, and then thinking about sort of a design for manufacture, assembly, and disassembly that really then supports sort of this circularity approach. So appreciate the opportunity to be here and share what we're working on in the standards space, and look forward to the conversation.
Thank you very much for that, Ryan and Neil. When we get you both back down at the front here, because I know you're eager to continue chatting, but we're in for a treat. And it's my pleasure to welcome back up on stage Emma. She's going to do a fly-through of one of the first presentations we had for the Excellency Jorge. And if my team at the back has done that, wonderful. So welcome, Emma. Another round of applause for Emma.
Thank you very much. So I'm Emma Lappalainen, as you might remember. I'm from Pink Group Consultants representing the Ministry of the Environment of Finland. And I'm stepping up here on behalf of Jorge Laguna Silis from 100 Network, UNEP, because the website, the web connection is not working. So now we are going to talk about public procurement as a key lever for climate and sustainable development. So public procurement is really an important and powerful tool that we should utilize more. Public procurement can account for around 50 to 20% of GDPs in some countries, especially when spending more than half in buildings and construction. And it makes it one of the most powerful tools governments can have to accelerate the sustainable and climate compatible growth. There's a lot of benefits, for example, driving demand for low carbon and circular buildings and construction. It can accelerate innovation and the adoption of cleaner technologies and materials. Sorry? Yeah? Okay. And de-risk also private investments in the low carbon transition. So sustainable public procurement is a powerful tool to maximize social and economic and environmental returns of the buildings and construction sector. So UNEP and the One Planet Network has been working on these issues for several years now and are trying to push them to the global agenda more powerfully. The key product of this process has been the Global Framework for Action for Sustainable and Public Procurement. It has its foundation in the SAIU Declaration as well as in the Buildings Breakthrough. And this process has been linked really closely with the Buildings Breakthrough Key Priority Action work. It's linked to the demand creation work of the Buildings Breakthrough Key Priority Action 2. And there's a lot of different important core partners working on this. For example, through the leadership panel, the Finnish Ministry of the Environment is involved, and the Netherlands, for example. Over 200 stakeholders have been consulted when developing this global framework for action. So the global framework for action really is laying out 5 common important principles related to sustainable and circular public procurement. And it's accompanied by actions menu, which is kind of practical tools collected from different partners around the world that help to implement the 5 common principles for sustainable public procurement. Next. So what sets this global framework for action apart from other similar processes? It's connected to circular economy. That's one point. It addresses the whole life cycle approach of the buildings with the circular economy approach, and considers also embedded and operational emissions. It is very much implementation focused, so it has this action menu with really practical tools and how stakeholders can take this agenda forward in practice. And it also aligns existing frameworks and initiatives. So UNEP has done a lot of work in mapping different frameworks and initiatives that are already there and linking them with this process. So this framework, global framework for action, has so far been endorsed by 6 countries: Ghana, Colombia, Finland, Japan, France, and Kenya. And UNEP is also now looking ahead to take this endorsement process to implementation through technical support. So UNEP and One Planet Network is looking at online modular capacity building programs, regional capacity building in Asia and Africa, as well as in the Caribbean. So there is an official way to endorse these 5 common principles. You can get in touch with the One Planet Network, Jorge Laguna Celis and Silvana Loise Leon and colleagues to get more information on this. But basically it's an endorsement of the 5 principles of the Global Framework for Action. Thank you very much.
Thank you for stepping in there last minute. That was very insightful. And they've been going through the ICBC process, like the principles for responsible timber construction. So now everyone's on the edge of their seats here, I can tell. So Clement, we're going to now check out if we can get a video. Our online participants have been very kind to record their presentations. All right, we're here in the... No? Okay, we've got Dr. Lena Wiles. And
Hi, I'm so excited to be
the
joining
plan
you
here,
at COP30, even as a virtual
those online.
participant. My name is Rama Danaevich, and I'm the Global Impact Partnership Lead at Autodesk. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to data and digital innovation and how it can help accelerate market transformation. But first, I wanted to tell you a little bit about Autodesk. Autodesk is building technology for design and make innovators across the world. We equip them to solve challenges big and small to build that better world we envision. This allows them to generate new ideas, explore options, and make better decisions. We want to help create new paths to efficiency, sustainability, and growth to transform their businesses and reinvent their business models. We know that technology can help solve some of our most challenging global issues. At Autodesk, we have multiple levers to drive progress. Measuring and managing our own impacts better equips us to help our customers do the same. And deploying outcome-based solutions supports broader industry transition to the sustainable, resilient, and inclusive future we collectively aim to achieve. We focus our efforts to advance positive outcomes across 3 primary areas to enable better energy and material choices, to improve global health and resilience, and to provide skills and opportunities for those seeking to advance their careers. And that brings me to the crux of today's conversation, the business opportunity and imperative to create technology that connects data, processes, and people. I don't think this is news to this audience, but sustainability is no longer a novel concept relegated to the sideline. It's central to the transformation of the global economy, and it's moving faster than most people realized. Last year alone, the world invested more than $2 trillion in this low carbon transition. That's a big number, but what matters more is the return on this investment. 40% of global electricity generation now comes from renewable sources. Global energy efficiency has improved dramatically in the last 2 decades. We now generate roughly twice as much economic output per unit of energy as we did in the 1990s. The global economy is growing, and we're using energy more intelligently. We're seeing progress with countries reducing emissions after reaching peak. The job is certainly not done, but we're getting there. So sustainability has moved from being a supplementary to a dominant issue, essential for economic growth and resilience. A lower carbon trajectory is not only achievable, it's competitive. And yet our physical environment is straining under crumbling infrastructure and more severe and frequent climatic events. In addition to the low carbon transition, we need to embed resiliency in our physical environment. Last year, we experienced over $400 billion in global economic losses due to natural disasters. That's the highest price tag yet. So while we're making progress, the pace of change must accelerate. And that's exactly why many of us participate at COP, to uncover opportunities to take collaboration from ideation to action. Because the opportunities for innovation, scale, and ultimately business value only continue to grow. So what's stopping us from taking advantage of this massive opportunity? Well, you can't build a resilient low-carbon future with siloed tools and fragmented data, particularly in the markets we all serve. Right now, carbon data, one of the things we need to measure and manage the most, is scattered, inconsistent, and too often locked away in incompatible PDFs, and it just won't scale. What we need is interoperability in both platforms and data. Just like sustainability has transitioned to a more central position on interoperability is now a critical ingredient for success. Platforms that can talk to each other using open standards like MCP servers and API-enabled ecosystems so that applications like agentic AI can reason across tools, not just within them. And data that is standardized so when you use a carbon factor in planning, it's the same one your suppliers, vendors, and subs use across all phases of the project. And resilience is what transforms sustainability from an aspiration into a guarantee. Sustainability lowers the risk. Resilience ensures we can withstand whatever comes next, whether that's climate extremes, supply chain shocks, or even policy swings. Together, they're not just two sides of the same coin, they're the foundation on how we build stronger businesses, stronger industries, and ultimately a stronger future. We see ourselves as a strategic partner for market transformation. We want to help the industry have positive impact. We take that responsibility seriously because we believe that collaboration is displacing differentiation as a competitive advantage. That's a major insight into why we partner and an explanation of what's driving our actions. Now I'll give an example of collaboration in action. One of the biggest challenges in decarbonizing the built environment is that everybody measures carbon a little differently. Acting on that realization, we worked for over 2 years under the auspices of the WBCSD and these 6 global companies to think about ways to make carbon more transparent and consistent across the value chain. It's a specific example of how we're working to break down silos and collaborate with major players to provide insights, best practices, and guidelines and share those back out to the industry. I just want to give you a very quick overview of the project, which evolved from unpacking the various ways these architecture and engineering firms approach embodied carbon assessment, by analyzing the same Revit BIM model, and by transparently sharing those details of the specific workflows and processes, we discovered opportunity areas for better alignment across the firms. We took that discovery and developed shared learnings and guidelines to provide back to the industry to contribute to the market transformation action agenda. And we're so pleased to announce that the report capturing this work and these guidelines was just launched last month. It's called A Guide to Alignment in the Built Environment, Step-by-Step Recommendations for Consistent and Transparent Embodied Carbon Assessments through Building Information Modeling, BIM Workflow Optimization. So scan this code because these findings are outlined in greater detail in the report, now live on the WBCSD website. And if you want to hear from all the practitioners, there's an in-depth panel on this collaboration on the global APC website as part of COP programming. Now that I've gone a little into specifics, I want to go back to the central question of the built environment decarbonization transition. Not just is it happening, but how fast and who benefits. If we align our data, our platforms, and our intelligence, we don't just adapt to the future, we shape it. Sustainability and resilience are not constraints. They are the tools to build a more stable, prosperous, and abundant future, particularly for the generations who will follow us. The companies, the industries, and the leaders who embrace innovation and resilience now won't just survive this transition, they'll come out stronger. Because when we do, we'll finish stronger than where we started. Thank you.
Thank you for having me join you remotely in the Buildings and Cooling Pavilion. I'm Dr. Lena Wiles. I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer at Adapteo Group. Today, I'll share how space as a service and large-scale reuse of modular buildings can speed up decarbonization, resilience, and circularity in the built environment. What you'll see today is two things. First, how a circular business model built around movable, reusable buildings solves urgent space needs, while cutting emissions and resource use. Second, I will share a first-of-its-kind way to measure circularity performance across products and business operations, the Adapteo Circularity Index, to answer the question, how circular are we? The built environment is off track on both carbon and materials. Scaling circular solutions is one of the fastest ways to reduce embodied emissions, lower extraction, and avoid waste now, not in 2040 or 2050. Our model solves urgent space needs too for communities and industries, while avoiding unnecessary construction and demolition, carbon and cost. Here's the core idea. We call it space as a service. Modular spaces that can be designed, built, disassembled, refurbished, and redeployed in weeks. This is a movable, reusable fleet of high-quality, on-demand buildings, on par with new permanent construction. Adapteo is the leading Northern European partner for premium flexible modular buildings, focused on social infrastructure, schools and daycares, healthcare and elderly care facilities, accommodation, and offices. Customers get speedy, flexible, fully equipped space solutions, and societies get lower embodied carbon and lower material throughput. These spaces are safe and thoughtfully designed, with the future in mind. As needs and requirements evolve, we can reconfigure, expand, optimize with add-ons, or relocate to where the need is. That built-in adaptability makes modular a resilience asset for cities, regions, and industries facing demographic shifts, climate impacts, climate mitigation and adaptation needs, and budget constraints. Here are some examples of what it can look like. A fully equipped accommodation village for 1,500 tunnel workers on the border between Denmark and Germany. An extra floor of offices on the roof of Oslo's biggest hospital. A worker village in northern Sweden, housing workers as they build a factory for the future. A school in Germany, housing pupils in their home area, while the local schools are renovated or rebuilt. Although we only need a flat surface to place our buildings on, sometimes even that is a challenge, like here deep in the fjordlands of Norway. Then we can house your employees in a floating village instead. And ultimately, when we can no longer rent out our modules, we try to find them a second home. As an example, we have recently donated modules for the rebuilding of Ukraine as temporary housing and to serve as fire stations. Measurement matters. Working inside this fundamentally circular business model every day, we kept coming back to the same question, and it's a seemingly simple one. How circular are we? To answer it, our Circularity Index, co-developed with Arup, is a pioneering method to track circular performance from product to business level. We explored everything from the design of our modules and buildings to the choice of materials, the management of our inflow and outflow of materials through our business, and finally to the overall view of how we manage our 1.6 million square meters of fleet, its utilization rates, refurbishment, use cycles, lifespans, etc. We ended up with 11 different circularity metrics, which we then aggregated to a headline metric that we call circular deployment. This headline metric gives us a snapshot of our total circularity performance in a given year, indicating how much of our annual deployment to the market was circular. This methodology gives us comparable decision-grade data, lets us set targets, prioritize investments, and communicate progress and challenges credibly. The method is benchmarked and aligned with existing circularity frameworks, and we hope it will inspire efforts to harmonize and track performance and scale circular solutions in the built environment. Here's an illustration of our levers for circularity and flow of materials. The small table to the left are the circular design indicators that can be seen as regulators to affect the flow of materials through Adapteo's operations. Here we look at things like design for efficiency, adaptability, reuse, and material and carbon intensity. These will help guide how we improve how we design and build our modules going forward. On the right is a diagram illustrating the flow of materials into Adapteo within our business operations, and finally materials leaving the Adapteo realm at the end of life. Wide strokes means lots of materials, thin strokes mean small volumes. What you can immediately see here is that this is a company that is growing, expanding by building new fleet, but very little material leaves. So outflow is small, not a lot of waste, not a lot of material reaching end of life for this particular year. It illustrates the core principle of a circular business model based on reuse, where the most important thing is to maintain as much material value as possible within the business. For us, the Circularity Index is a very useful diagnostic tool. The work with the Circularity Index has generated a list of prioritized potential improvement areas, making it a tool for internal decision-making, but also a tool for transparency, reporting, and communicating with our stakeholders. And now we can track progress, continuous, verifiable improvement, and system-level impact. Let's talk carbon. When we reuse and refurbish Adapteo modules, life cycle assessments show up to 96% lower embodied carbon than building a new permanent structure with standard materials. Even new Adapteo modules, before their first redeployment, can be up to 60% lower in embodied carbon compared with a new permanent building. So it should come as no surprise that our starting point is always reuse first, and we make sure that reused spaces still look and feel as new. Scaling this model does several things at once. It helps meet climate targets, avoids unnecessary new construction and demolition, cuts cost and optimizes resource use, minimizes waste, and boosts resilience by keeping capacity flexible. Most importantly, it enables and accelerates the retrofitting and upgrading of the permanent building stock, buying cities, regions, and industries time and optionality while they decarbonize and adapt for tomorrow's needs. We're more than happy to share more details on our methods and collaborate and partner up to speed up sustainable change together. We believe that the solutions already available can deliver on the global climate goals. We just need to scale and accelerate them. I'm Lina Wiles, CSO at Adaptio, and you can reach me at lina.wiles@adaptio.com. Thank you.
We've got one more video, and then we're going to jump into a bit more. It's my pleasure to introduce Nicholas Ramirez, one of my colleagues from the Materials Hub. He's the Executive Director of the Costa Rican Green Building Council. And while Clement tees that up, we're good to go. Thank you.
Good day and greetings from Costa Rica. I'm sorry I cannot join you live. Nevertheless, I am very grateful to be a part of this engaging session. I would like to talk to you today about empowering ambition through quality data and the experience we've had here in Costa Rica. Thankfully, we have had a very valuable ambition on behalf of the government, probably based on past successful experiences with reforestation and the abolishment of our army in order to support public education and other similar social, political experiences that have given us the idea that we can make valuable change when the ambition is set properly. Within our green building sector, we have seen this in initiatives such as the National Decarbonization Plan, which was put forth in 2018, the NDCs that were published at the end of 2020, very valuable initiatives in terms of sustainable public procurement, and how this has been moving forward throughout different sectors. Our national strategy for a circular economy with an entire chapter dedicated to construction. And most recently, in 2024, with our taxonomy for green finance, also with an entire chapter dedicated to construction. These different initiatives have served to work on public education, advocacy, and prepare the sector for the transformation that we all need to reach our national goals. In different circumstances, we can see that sometimes there is a public push in order to drive these ideas forward, and private sector might be either willing or not willing to collaborate or join this transformation. Sometimes there is a drag, sometimes there is willingness. This eventually usually turns into a kind of collaboration where you might have public pull and private push or collaboration of different sorts trying to move these ideas forward. And we've seen this in different instances. So this ambition is being historically, we've seen that this ambition does start to translate into conscientiousness, awareness, advocacy, and so on and so on in the sector. Now, what does this translate to? What we're seeing, for example, the different initiatives that I've mentioned, we can see terms like energy efficiency, embodied carbon, resilient buildings, and local materials. These are topics that start to become mentioned and help to create awareness among the sector of what these are and what we should be doing in reference to these subjects. You see items like product documentation, equal labeling, certifications both for projects and materials, post-use of construction materials and debris, and building performance and resilience. These are some ideas of how this starts to look and start to shape within our sector. Eventually, this leads to sector transformation momentum, where we get the public sector and the private sector on the same page, pushing these initiatives forward, and then all of a sudden there is a demand for relevant policy ambition. Now we know what we want, we know what these subjects are about, we know that we can do them, and the idea is now that relevant policy has to be put in place and in order for this to accelerate and actually be implemented. And this is where data comes in, because at this point, we've talked about the topics, the sector is aware of it, but we need to have actual data. If we want to create policy and regulation, we have ambition thresholds that we have to set properly to see where they should be. If we put them too high, the sector will not even try to achieve them, think that they're too far and unachievable, or that the resources aren't available for that transformation, so there will not be a push towards that. If they're too low and they've already met them, there will not be a significant effort or transformation, and their sector will just continue with its business as usual scenario. So what we have in this case in Costa Rica, and we've seen this in several other places as well, is we have usually two different scenarios. We have either very high quality data for a very limited data set. For example, if we have buildings that are certified with LEED or EDGE, we have lots of technical data about these buildings, but there are very few buildings that have these certifications. Or on the other hand, we have self-declaration or self-reporting initiatives where there's the quality of data is not very robust. You know, we're not really sure how much we can trust that data, who is taking that data. It's not always verified. And so we have maybe a robust data set. We have a lot of data, but that quality of that data is fairly low. Historically, this has been the choice we've had to make between these two scenarios. Either high quality data for a very limited data set, or low quality data for a very robust data set. And neither one is ideal. So in this situation, here in Costa Rica, for example, and other places as well, we're looking for tools and platforms that can help us to achieve what we need, right? So here in this case, I want to present to you the capsule building tool. This was developed in collaboration with the Global Alliance for Buildings and Construction, within that framework of which we are a part of as well. And that's how we came to know the tool. But this platform for us was very attractive, because first of all, and most importantly, it has a very user-friendly interface, which means you don't have to be an extremely qualified technical person to be able to gather data, okay? So, and that data is gathered in a way that is fairly trustworthy. So I won't go into a lot of detail about the tool right now, but basically it's customizable. We've already translated it into Spanish in collaboration with the CAPSA people, and it's being implemented at a pilot phase right now with university students and so on and so forth. The good part about this is that the data that is gathered from local buildings, we're not using data from other places, the real existing buildings in Costa Rica, that data is gathered in a way that can be verified. So there's a back end where we can see pictures, we can see what the data is being put into it, what the documentation is about. We can verify location. We can upload local climate scenarios and so on and so forth. So this makes the data, the tool much more attractive. Also, you can analyze portfolio typologies. So you can concentrate on a certain subsector of residential housing or a certain subsector of commercial buildings. And this is very attractive once again, because this is real data gathered in Costa Rica about Costa Rican buildings that we can start to analyze. And this will then help us to move forward in a way that we can actually start to use this real national data for different initiatives. Such as, now that we do have high quality data and a robust data set, these are some concrete examples of things we're actually doing with this tool right now that we have access to this interesting data, right? Through a GEF-funded project we're doing with UNIDO and the Ministry of Environment, we're focused on material supply chain. We're gathering a building stock inventory. We're building the composition materials, what materials are actually in our buildings, and this will help us to calculate what material bank volumes we have. What volumes of materials are present in our existing building stock? What material is out there? Which one of these have maybe harmful substances? Which one of these can be recycled? So on and so forth. In another initiative called PEEP-COOL, which is a collaboration between AFD and GIZ, we're looking, and this project is being implemented in 11 countries, including Costa Rica. One of the things we want to do with this same platform is develop our national baseline, so we can have per typology, per square meter, an idea of what our energy consumption is, what our water consumption is, and what our embodied carbon might be per square meter per typology once again. This can later be used to develop the public sector construction strategy, which is something they want to do across the different ministries and have a common goal for all the ministries to move forward in alignment in this sense. And thirdly, there is also the idea of developing our first energy efficiency code. So once again, having real data about existing buildings in Costa Rica is basic and vital in order to develop this code. Finally, we want to use it moving forward for our updating of NDCs. We can start to have an embodied carbon inventory, and we can start to see what different decarbonization measures put forward by the government and by the private sector in collaboration, what impact these different measures can have and how they move the needle in terms of decarbonization. So these are just some concrete examples of what we hope to do and how quality data can really help to empower ambition. Thank you for your attention.
Fabulous. Let's get a big round of applause, final round of applause for Nicholas there. Bear with me. Now, got a change of plans to close out this session. I'll just check with Clement. 1 second. Okay, and sorry about that. We're going to have now Mr. Shuri Moroi, Deputy Director General of Japanese Ministry of Land, Infrastructure, Transport and Tourism, MLIT, to give some closing remarks to the session. Please come on stage. Following this, we're going to have some casual questions, and we might take that offline. Thank you very much. Could I get a round of applause?
Hello, everyone. My name is Miura from the Ministry of Infrastructure of Japanese government. As we come to the end of this session, I'd like to take a moment to reflect and express my gratitude. To begin, I'd like to share that at 30, Japan endorsed the Global Framework for Action on Sustainable Public Procurement. Building on this step, Japan will continue to make steady efforts toward achieving decarbonized society. In today's world, buildings are expected to respond to 3 key challenges: decarbonization, resilience, and circularity. According to the UNEP 2023 Global Status Report, the share of embodied carbon in the building sector was about 25% in 2021, and it is projected to rise to nearly 50% by 2050. This clearly shows that addressing embodied carbon has become a global priority alongside reducing operational emissions. At the same time, we must also enhance resilience and accelerate the shift toward a circular economy. Here, digital technologies such as building information modeling and data-driven innovation will play a vital role in realizing these goals. To enable this transformation, it is essential to create markets that value green and low-carbon buildings, and public procurement will be a powerful driver of that change. I'm truly delighted that today's session brought together such outstanding speakers, offering such a discussion on whole life carbon WLC, as well as inspiring insights on data and digital innovation. These presentations have highlighted the importance of integrating environment, social, and digital approaches to achieve sustainability. I'm confident that today's discussion has deepened our shared understanding of how procurement can serve as a catalyst for global transformation. Let me introduce Japan's initiatives here. We are now preparing to introduce a WLC framework for buildings by 2028. And there are 3 key issues we are facing on. Number 1, balancing the resilience and the decarbonization. As an earthquake-prone country, Japan needs stronger, more resilient structures, which can lead to higher embodied carbon. Finding the right balance between the safety and sustainability is therefore a critical challenge for us. Number 2, using digital technologies and AI. Since calculating CO2 emissions can be complicated, what matters most is to simplify the process of WLC assessment and reduce administrative burdens. Number 3, leveraging public procurement to stimulate the market demand for low-carbon building and materials. I'd like to provide a bit more about our recent initiatives for green public procurement. Japan has already set ambitious goals. By 2030, we aim to reduce operational energy rise in new public buildings by 50% on average. WLC assessments for national government buildings will start in 2027, 1 year earlier than for the private sector. We also have 2 major legal frameworks to supporting these efforts: the Green Purchasing Act in 2000 and the Environmentally Friendly Procurement Act in 2007. These frameworks are shifting public demand toward environmentally responsible products and services. Moreover, national government facilities are implementing practical measures as improved insulation, high-efficiency air conditioning systems, and rainwater reuse. All of these efforts reflect close collaboration among the ministers working toward a shared goal. To conclude, sustainable public procurement is not just a policy tool. It's a shared global responsibility to build a low carbon, resilient, and circular future. By working together, we can turn public spending into a force for transformation and ensure that every project contributes to a sustainable and inclusive world. I look forward to our continued collaboration between COP30. Thank you.
Okay, with that, we're going to conclude the formal proceedings for this afternoon's session. And I thank you very much for those who have remained online. On behalf of the Global ABC and the Buildings Cooling Pavilion, I do apologise for the technical difficulties we've experienced here. We've tried our best. What I'll offer in the meantime, I would like to invite the speakers today, if they would like to, we can come on stage and have a bit of a casual conversation and discussion. We have got time to extend for about 15, 20 minutes. And I think it would be worthwhile doing that. I would encourage you to jump on stage. If not, we can draw to a close. So, Felix, have you got time? Emma? You're most welcome to join as well. Okay, so yeah. Now we did have a Slido running, and well done to the team behind here with UNEP getting that together. Now, I've got questions as well. I don't know about some of you on stage here, but look, I'll be fair. What incentives or policies could best accelerate circularity strategies, such as large-scale material reuse or design for adaptability? That's the first one. Do we want to rattle a few of these off, Clement? How many more? We've got a few questions on Slido, don't we? Can we get them all on? Yeah, let's get them up there, because I think that we can group a bit. We can't list them. Anyway, how can public procurement drive consistent whole life cycle assessment practices across buildings and the construction sector? What technology solutions would you like to see to address decarbonisation and supply chain for the built environment? Where do you, as the audience, see gaps that technology might be able to fill? Now, that one feels more suitable for Autodesk and Rama, but I know that Rix and ICC and most certainly Emma would be able to fill in some comments to that. Let's go one more, because I have briefed these, and we might group a couple just because we're short on time. That's it. So I think we're going to jump to one here. I mean, let's look at the affordability angle. How can whole life carbon and circularity be used to reduce long-term costs, not increase them? Can I get some thoughts, short fire, maybe 30 seconds, 1 minute from each of you who are willing to jump onto that? Let's start with Ryan.
Yeah, I can certainly start. I mean, I think when offsite construction example really provides an opportunity to be more efficient in the sort of design, construction, and fabrication process, but also designing for disassembly and reuse. And so having sort of that process together, I think really provides a great opportunity.
I think further to what just Ryan said, I mentioned previously also, and I think our colleague from Ghana mentioned, taking that whole life cycle view is very crucial. Doing costing alongside decarbonization is also quite important. So I think rather than looking at as an added cost, we need to look at our current practices. I know there are great examples and exemplar projects, but mainstream, our focus always is on first cost and getting the construction done. I think if with that kind of a mindset and that kind of an operating model for the whole of the sector, it's very difficult to discuss cost-effective way of low carbon construction. So I think it's very important for us to keep that in mind. Total cost of ownership or should cost modeling. These are some of the things we also promote at RICS. I think that's very crucial.
Emma, would you like to make a comment?
Thank you. Yes, I would like to take the discussion back to the three sides of circularity in the built environment. So depending on the context, of course, in the global north, it's very important to look at the retrofitting of buildings and looking at existing buildings and how to utilize them better than we do at the moment. When we look at the global south, very important to look at material circularity, reuse, recycling of building materials, building products, building parts, etc. And also when we look at new buildings, to design in a way that we can disassemble and reuse and recycle in the end of the life of the buildings.
Thank you for that, Emma. Any further comments from that side of the stage, or we might jump to one more? Most welcome to take a seat here. We're at the Buildings and Cooling Pavilion. So what about resilience? What procurement choices today can we make that will matter most for the climate risks emerging in 5-10 years going forward? This microphone's a bit... Maybe we can get a response from over this side of the room.
I can certainly start. I mean, I think the important thing is, you know, as you're setting your procurement policies or your design criteria, it's not just about the sort of risks that we're seeing today, but really anticipating what are the future risks that we may see and building that into the procurement process. And then ultimately that leads to addressing a lot of the whole life cycle and circularity discussion as well, where we see a lot of intersections between resilience and circularity around sort of principles of adaptability and durability and sort of all of those pieces. So being able to sort of have that longer looking piece, and if you think about, particularly from a procurement perspective, you're really protecting the public dollar. You're using that dollar effectively. You know, governments typically hold buildings for a very long time, and so, you know, sort of assuring that those buildings can last and can continue to provide for the citizens.
Okay. I guess.
Thank you. As I mentioned before, Japan is an earthquake-prone country. So when you talk about the building safety and building resilience, safety comes always first over anything else. But when you introduce the WSC approaches, you have to think about how we can reduce the amount of CO2. But if you really want to build a stronger structure, you need a steel, which costs a lot, which needs a lot of CO2 emissions. So we are still wondering how we can reach an optimal balance between the resilience and CO2 emission reductions. That's what we are still wondering, how we can reach such an optimal balance.
So I can maybe add to that slightly, taking a different approach. I call it the project next door analysis. We need to ask ourselves, do we consider resilience practices, workflows, decisions in our core design, construction, post-construction workflows? Probably not. So I think one of the important things to do is bring that into the main workflows and work practices on most projects, mainstream projects. We did a recent survey. We actually do an annual survey. This is our 6th edition, called the RICS Sustainability Report. About 3,000 to 4,000 responses every year. In the 6th edition, we ask questions about biodiversity, resilience, adaptation, and you will see that the responses show that we still don't consider the risks associated with resilience in our core workflows. It may be an add-on on some projects, but if you look at the run-of-the-mill project, it's still not happening.
Yeah, thank you. I think resilience on this issue is very important for us to, if we want to decarbonize the buildings. But from the part of our world, where I'm coming from, we haven't come to terms fully with the this kind of sustainable procurement systems. As I presented, we are still developing on that. And so we need to look at the risk involved and all those nitty-gritties, such that we'll begin to educate ourselves. We begin to build capacity for the professionals to perform well, and then also the community to appreciate the fact that there's the need for us to decarbonize and also save our own self. So the work is going on, yet we need to build the capacity for resilience, else we might not be able to get to where we are. So public procurement is important, and it is being driven by the government, and therefore we need to bring on board the private sector so that we'll be able to achieve what we want to do.
Thank you very much for that, Felix. How's the audience here? Professor Maddie, how are you? And got a couple of characters over here. Can I take any questions, if you have any questions from the crowd? I can see one hand at the back. Thank you. We'll come to you, Maddie, a second.
Okay. My name is Han Chun, and I come from China. But I research the AI and the urban ecosystem. So today I heard a lot of guidance framework from all of you, but I really confused how this guidance and this framework can use to AI system, because I think in the future the assessment can be due by AI system, not for human. So this is my first question. Can your guidelines use for the AI system? And the second, of course, do you think in the future assessment finished by AI is possible or not? Thank you.
I think an excellent question. No discussion today should go without talking about AI. I'm glad you brought it up. If you look at our standards, for example, they are flat PDFs. We are rethinking whether it should be digitally enabled, human readable, machine readable standards or not. Many standards organizations are moving in that direction. So many of the codes and standards are AI enabled. So you can, like internally, we have created our own AI agent for our WLCA standards. So if somebody, a member asks us a question, rather than going through the 220-page document, we can use the AI agent to answer some of these questions. There are many developments happening in this space. There are some startups who have databases of materials with their EPDs that are AI enabled. I think one of the leading forces obviously is Autodesk, and Autodesk is going to soon release something called a model context server, or MCP protocol server, that will again help AI systems to talk to databases, talk to standards and codes. So there's lots of things happening in this space, and I think LCA can be AI enabled very soon.
Yeah, I can certainly add to that relative to sort of our perspective and our opportunities within the AI space. A few years ago, we actually brought all of our codes and standards onto an online, searchable platform and launched a code navigator. So you can ask sort of the question of, what solar heat gain coefficient do I need in climate zone 4, and it will give you, an answer. The challenge is that, a lot of the sort of AI systems are not built to understand technical documents. And so you often get, sort of crazy answers and potentially hallucinations and wrong answers. And with, sort of codes and standards that implicate things like safety, you don't want to rely on those. And so we actually sort of created our own internal sort of AI that we taught, sort of how to actually navigate the codes. I think the other piece that we'll see, and Neil mentioned some of the startups sort of working in this space, but an area where we'll see, I think, increased sort of activity is the sort of automated plan review. So being able to compare a building information model to code requirements. I think there's still a lot of reluctance there from governments and local officials to actually rely on that. But I think what we'll see maybe in the short term is some of the sort of very easy things to do around, door widths for accessibility. It's either, sort of 3 feet or not. And so, those sorts of things, I think we could see, sort of moving forward. And then, who knows what we'll see into the future.
Thank you for that, Ryan. We're going to hear now from Matti and then across the pool.
Yes, thank you very much. Matti Kuittinen from Aalto University. I'm Professor of Sustainable Construction. I have a comment and a question. So I'm afraid that the construction sector is a really underperformer when it comes to sustainability and climate ambition. Because, I mean, it's not rocket science to bring down emissions. With current technologies, we already can bring down emissions by 30 or even 40% in buildings. So when we compare this to other fields of technology, I would invite everybody to go, for instance, to the Pavilion of Japan, where there are magnificent examples of how we can observe Earth with satellites and see precisely where we have methane emissions. And in the future, we are also going to be looking at the photosynthetic uptake. So why is it so difficult in construction sector? And then my question to you, sir, from Japanese ministry, could you ramp up, why can't we ramp up the mandatory requirements for green public procurement so that there would be, let's say, a mandatory requirement of, say, 20% of recycled content in all buildings? Because this is something that we could easily achieve today. From your perspective, sir, what are the bottlenecks for this? Because I used to work at the Ministry of the Environment of Finland, and I wrote 2 guidebooks for public procurement, but it doesn't help if we write these guidebooks if nobody takes them into use. So from your perspective, what are the bottlenecks for taking the already known methods into use in public procurement?
Thank you, Matti. I echo the comment and the answer for you.
It's pretty hard to give an appropriate answer, but when you think about green things, green procurement, environmental issues, it always comes with cost effectiveness. If some products are good for environment, but if it costs higher than the usual things, people and businesses and even government are hesitant to buy, purchase or incorporate such things. But we all know that we have to do something environmentally friendly things along with the global trend. So 20% or 30%, somewhere in the middle, will be right balance between extremes. But I have to admit that we are still running late or need to catch up with advanced countries. But we are also taking that cost of things into account. That's what we are facing right now.
Okay, thank you for that. Materials is one that we can probably be looking at, and I think I might hand over the Paul now. You've got a question?
Thank you. Thank you all very much for these presentations. Very, very interesting to see. One of the things that Built by Nature has been involved in this week is the formal launch of the Principles for Responsible Timber Construction. And Principle 2 is all about accounting for the full life cycle, about ensuring absolute transparency and robustness in the way that we report and account for the full life cycle impacts. And I think there should be a lot of consistency with the tools and approaches that you've described this afternoon. I completely understand why, from a public authority and public procurement perspective, in most cases, you would be material agnostic. You're focused on the outcomes, particularly in reduction of carbon, but in terms of broader environmental impacts as well. However, there are qualities to timber and other natural materials in addition, which is around carbon storage. In Finland, they have what is recognized as the carbon handprint, which includes the biogenic carbon that can be stored in the material. I spoke yesterday to a mayor of a Brazilian city who said he's introducing incentives for developers to use timber in his city tax breaks, amendments to the code and so on to encourage the use of timber for that reason. I just wonder if anybody has any further comments on how that could be incorporated into standards. Thank you.
I think our standard requires assessors to calculate and report biogenic carbon separately so that we can exactly study this issue. So if you go to our standard, our reporting template has embodied carbon, but then you have separately reporting of biogenic carbon upfront, in use, end of life. Obviously, any material that you want to propose should be appropriately used and should be sustainable sourced, which I think applies to timber. So our standard basically use -1 +1 static LCA approach. A timber beam arrives into your system boundary, which is your building. You get a credit of -1 kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalent. And then when it leaves your system, you basically are putting back whatever was stored. So +1 kilograms per kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalent is released back. I know there are some standards like the French standard RE 2020, which uses dynamic LCA. So for storing timber for 60 years in a building, you do get credit of that storage of the emissions that were not in the environment but were stored in your building as part of biomass or this biogenic. So there's a lot of work still to be done. I know that the UN Life Cycle Initiative recently came out with some principles on how to calculate biogenic carbon. We are quite trying to stay at pace, and maybe in the future we can also incorporate dynamic LCA. Perhaps you can study what happened in France with the introduction of this credit. Maybe timber was just being used as a material in the building, perhaps not fully appropriately, just to get that credit. So we want to take a balanced approach. So right now, static LCA seems to be the right approach.
Yeah, and for standard 240, the current draft also incorporates biogenic as a important attribute to include. I think the other sort of important piece to that, as we continue to rely on EPDs, environmental product declarations, as the mechanism to determine the sort of environmental performance of products, we need to make sure that the product category rules and sort of the rules of how we actually measure things incorporate those sorts of things. So some of the things that we're seeing in the US around wood products is sort of industry-wide or regional EPDs, which doesn't really get to sort of the individual practices, within the forests, which, as you mentioned, certainly has an impact on its ability to meet specific climate goals. So I think that's certainly a challenge that needs to be addressed.
Allow Professor here to make a comment and reply.
Yeah, very briefly about LCA, that's my field of science, and I believe that even though the LCA method maybe never be complete, I think that it's more than sufficient for just taking it into account, into use and going forward with it. We have robust enough and scientifically solid enough LCA practices for both accounting for both the emissions and the storages and their potential benefits in terms of temporal storage of biogenic carbon. So I think that from my scientific view, we have no excuse in not taking these into account, and I would challenge UN member states and everybody to embed this into building regulations, ideally in a decade, because as we all know, we are building so much during this century that if we do not mitigate emissions from building construction, we are not going to be able to limit global warming anywhere near 2 degrees, and we can't mitigate if we don't measure. And I argue that the current standards and current LCA methods are very good already for this. Of course, they need to be improved as we go, but it's my challenge and also my plea that this has to be implemented into legislation and public procurement yesterday.
Thank you very much for that. Unless there's any further comments, I do apologize to UNEP. I did promise to finish this by 3:30, and there's another session starting in 3 minutes. This session's been brought to you by the Materials Hub at the Global Alliance for Building and Construction. We've had a stellar cast and we've had a great crowd, and I thank the comments it received, and the Bio-Based Materials Working Group stands behind them. I'm Harry Mills from Built by Nature, and the Bio-Based Materials Working Group with my colleagues on stage and those online. Can I please get a final round of applause for this on the stage? I think we might try and get I know it's been a very, very patchy session. Let's get a quick group photo if we've got time. In the middle here.